Hi Yogi, and welcome to another Slow Flow class with me, Oceana. In today's episode, we will be heading into a brand new 4-week series, which will be exploring the 4 foundations of mindfulness as they were taught by the Buddha himself. These lectures are still considered some of his most foundational and most important teachings to this day. And the whole series is really inspired by a request that I had from a lovely subscriber here on the channel, Janina. I hope I have not completely mispronounced your name now. And she specifically asked me for a very slow yin sequence. Now, I have to be really honest here and say that even though I trained in yin yoga with one of the inventors, Sarah Powers, I actually decided a couple of years ago that I did not want to teach yin in isolation to itself. So as you can tell, this is going to be a yang to yin yoga class. We'll be starting with some very fiery yang postures which engage the yang tissue in the body, which is the muscles. And then we'll sort of dial it down into our yin practice, where we're really focusing on the yin tissue in the body, which is the ligaments and the bones. And in those postures, you might like to have a little bit more support than you normally would, in which case you might like to grab some of these props. I've got a bolster here, a yoga blanket, block, 2 bricks, and an eye pillow. If you don't have all of these things lying around in your house, that's perfectly understandable. I will link a video here for you that will teach you how to substitute any of these props with things you have lying around in your house right now. So hopefully that's helpful. We'll be starting in a reclined position on our yoga mat. So when you're ready, join me there, Yogi. So once you find your way onto your back body, separate the legs, let the toes soften outwards, let your arms separate away from the torso with the palms facing towards the ceiling. Bring your attention to the distribution of weight across your body. So notice whether your left or right leg feels just a touch heavier than the other. Notice which part of the back of your hips, the pelvis, is more firmly connected to the ground. Feel that same difference in your hands and fingertips. Is there one hand that is a little bit softer than the other? Is one arm just a little bit more connected to the floor? Which shoulder blade at the back of your body do you feel most firmly and fully planted into the ground? For most of us, our more dominant side will usually hold on to tension for a little bit longer than the other, especially if you've just come from sitting or standing. It can take us a little bit longer to let go of those muscular tensions. And then gently we'll draw our attention along the spine, starting in the sacrum. So shift your awareness towards the very, very bottom of the spine into the pelvis, where the sacrum rests against the floor. And then travel with your mind's eye along the lower lumbar vertebra. Really feel and notice the curve in your lower back. Establish for yourself just how big you think that gap is between your lower spine and the floor. And then for a moment, test your theory. So slip your hands underneath your back body. See whether what you felt with your perception, with your mind's eye, is truthful to reality. And then relax your hands back by your side. Trace your way along your mid-spine, where that connection to the floor comes back into play. And then feel that gentle lifting of the spine at C7, that very last of the top vertebra which you can usually feel at the base of your neck. It's the bone that tends to stick out just a little bit for most of us. Trace your way along the cervical vertebra at the top of the neck. Again, establish for yourself a mental image of how big that gap is between the neck and the floor. Again, just a little test of that theory. Slip the hands underneath the neck. Establish whether your perception is truthful. And then gently shift your attention to your breathing. For a few rounds, follow the movement of the breath through the nostrils as you inhale and out as you exhale. Comparing each cycle of breath to the one before, the one after. And when you're ready, bending the knees, planting the feet firmly to the floor. Allow your pelvis to adjust. And then start by allowing your left knee to move in and away from you. So bringing it towards your left shoulder and then moving it back away. Now for the first couple of rounds, really pay attention to what is holding you back from simply bringing that knee all the way to the shoulder. Where does the tension in the back of the body, that pulling and holding back, where does that come from? And then for a couple of rounds, pay attention to your foot as it lifts away from the floor and comes back to the ground. Which part of the foot connects first or releases first? And for the next couple of rounds, as you lift the foot, flex the toes towards you. See how that changes the quality of that movement. And then for another couple of rounds, point the toes away from you as the foot lifts. Again, notice how that's changed the movement for you. Next time that the foot comes in, or the knee rather, comes in towards you, circle the knee around the hip joint a few times in one direction. If there's any sort of glitches within that movement or areas where it feels quite sticky, then slow the movement down. Usually that's a very easy fix. And gently reverse that movement when you're ready, going in the opposite direction with the knee. When you're ready, the knee comes back into the chest. You start to straighten the leg towards the ceiling. You can keep a really generous bend on the knee or straight leg if you prefer. A couple of rounds just flexing and pointing the toes. And then circling the toes around the ankle a couple of times, one way and the other. Same principle applies here. So the slower you go, the smoother that movement usually becomes. And then when you're ready, draw the left knee into the chest, bring the right knee in as well. Bring your arms up to shoulder height, bending at the elbows for cactus arms. As you exhale, let your knees roll over to the left side. Let your eyes travel to the right. Inhale, come back through center. Lift the head and knees. Exhale, let the knees roll to the right, head to the left. And then find that movement a couple of times on your own. Still working with the breath here. And the next time that you come back from the right side, don't rush to get there. We'll eventually meet in the center. We'll plant our feet back to the floor. We'll let the hands come down by the sides of the hips, palms facing up. And then we'll do that on the right side. So bringing the right knee towards the right shoulder as you exhale. And then inhale to release the knee away from you. Again, first couple rounds, just notice Any tension in the back of the body that's stopping the knee from coming towards your shoulder blade. And equally notice how that's affecting your lower back curve and the pelvis. And then a couple of times, pay attention to the movement of the foot as it connects into and away from the floor. For the last few rounds, take a moment to flex the toes a couple of times as you lift the knee. And then point the toes a couple of times. Feel that difference in the quality of the movement. One is a little bit trickier than the other, but maybe for you it's the opposite to me. And the next time that the knee comes to your chest, start to circle the knee in one direction. Notice if this side has more sticky points than the other or less. Maybe it's the same. And then reverse the circles when you're ready. Go the opposite way. And gently next time that the knee comes in towards your chest, start to straighten the leg. Feel free to keep a bend. Start initially just flexing and pointing the toes to and away from your face a couple times. Circle the toes around the ankle in one direction. And see if you can make that a smooth movement. And then turn the toes the opposite way. Draw your right knee into the chest, let the left knee follow. This time grab hold of the backs of the knees with your hands. Use your legs to build a little bit of momentum, rocking forwards and back through the spine. We'll gradually make our way into chair pose at the front of the yoga mat. So if you can, get a good amount of momentum going. And then plant your feet at the front, transition onto the feet, making your way into that invisible chair. Spinning the pinky fingers in, the sitting bones draw down and back. Chest is lifted, shoulders soft. Pressing down through the right foot, the left knee draws into the chest for Hasta Padangusthasana, coming to stand up. And then flexing the left toes to the shin. Press the heel away from you. Keep that lift of the leg just a little bit longer than you might want to. See if you can lift the leg a little bit higher without hiking your left hip up. So keep that hip tucked in towards the center line. And when you're ready, sweep the leg back. Take the hands by the sides of your hips or under the shoulders into Warrior 3, Virabhadrasana 3. Pressing the heel of the leg and the crown of your head in opposite directions, finding length like a piece of string. You're building tension here. Find the breath. Maybe wobble and struggle with the balance, but come back to the pose when you can. When you're ready, bend both knees very generously. Plant the ball of your left foot behind you. Maybe hands on the floor or unsupported. You slowly make your way to the ground, all the way onto your sitting bones. Flexing the right toes towards your face. The left knee is bent in towards you. As you inhale, left fingertips lift to lengthen left side of the waist. Spinning that hand behind you as you exhale. On an inhale, lifting right fingertips up, lengthening right side of the waist. Either wrapping this arm around the top knee or hooking it across your thigh. And then again, optional here to keep this high five position or index finger and thumb touch for Jnana Mudra. As you breathe in, lengthen from your sitting bones all the way through the spine, grow tall. As you exhale, maybe closing the eyes, rolling right rib cage forward, left shoulder back, deepening that twist if you prefer to. But of course you could stay where you are. We find a couple of rounds of breath, continuously working the breath as we deepen or stay in the pose. On your next inhale, releasing the hook of your right elbow, planting both hands past the right side of your mat to bow the forehead down, de-rotate the spine. Inhale as you come back up. Step your left foot out to the left edge of your yoga mat. Press down into your right heel. You can use the hands on the floor for support or lean your fingertips forward until you come onto the ball of your left foot. So it is a toe balance, Skandasana. And from here, again, maybe the hands are on the ground or unsupported. You transition Skandasana to the front of your mat onto the opposite leg. You find that length in the spine. And if the balance is easy, the hands come together in front of the chest, prayer position, Anjali Mudra, finding focus. Gently from here, we transition into a low lunge twist at the back of the mat. So shift your body weight into the left leg, plant the right hand underneath its own shoulder, bring the right knee down, lift the left fingertips up into the ceiling, spinning the chest open. Left hand can come behind the head for support, which usually allows you to roll your bottom rib cage a little bit more forward, top shoulder back. Float your left arm all the way back and down. Frame your left foot. Spin the right heel down as you inhale, windmill the arms into Warrior Two, Virabhadrasana 2. Reaching through the knuckles of your hands. Bend your left knee generously into the lunge. Take the eyes over your left middle finger and let the shoulders drop away from the ears. Let the breath settle. Gently bring your right hand maybe to the back of your torso and find a piece of fabric on your top or trousers. Otherwise, maybe you can reach the right hand all the way towards your left hip. And then using that hand to pull the hip back in space, maybe straighten the front leg. Left fingertips reach in the opposite direction to create length along the left side of the waist. The back of the hand can land to the inner thigh, calf, ankle or floor. From there, pressing into the bottom hand, spin the chest open, draw the right shoulder back and lift the eyes if there's no neck issues. Otherwise, keep the chin between your collarbones instead. And let your body settle into that slightly different relationship to gravity here. Press down through your front big toe, the outer edge of your back foot. And when you're ready, let the eyes travel to the floor. Generous bend on the left knee, transitioning this into half moon, Ardha Chandrasana. You can slowly take your left fingertips as far in front of you as you can, shifting your body weight into the left leg, possibly staying on top of the right big toe or floating the right foot off the ground. From there, spinning the right hip, opening it towards the right side. Right shoulder reaches for the ceiling. Again, finding that tension between the right heel, moving in the opposite direction to the crown of your head, creating a length in the upper body. And when you're ready, releasing the right hand underneath its own shoulder. Squaring your right hip to the floor, so a sort of supported Warrior Three pose. And then stepping the right foot to the back of the mat. Feet together as you inhale, dropping the sitting bones down and back for chair pose at the back of the mat. And gently shifting our body weight into the left leg as we come to stand. Right knee draws into the chest for Hasta Padangusthasana on the second side. Flexing the right toes. Press the heel away from you. Again, find that lift without letting your right hip hike up. So spin the right hip down. On an exhale, take the leg back. Arms either on the floor for support under the shoulders or possibly floating the hands by the sides of the hips for Virabhadrasana 3, Warrior 3. Again, create that tension first. Press the heel away, then possibly straighten the standing leg if you wish. Generously bend both of your knees, plant the ball of your right foot close behind you. Either hands on the floor for support or unsupported. Come all the way onto your sitting bones. Left leg is straight with the toes flexing towards your face. As you inhale, right fingertips lift and lengthen right side of the waist. Spin the hand behind you as you inhale, left fingertips lift, lengthen left side of the waist. Now either wrapping the top arm around the top knee or possibly hooking it across or elbow across the thigh. You could keep this high five position of the top hand or bring index finger and thumb to touch for Jnana Mudra. As you breathe in, find the sitting bones lengthen upwards through the entire spine. As you exhale, spin the chest open. Maybe close the eyes and feel into the sensations of the spine as you find a few more rounds of breath here in the twist. On your next inhale, releasing the top elbow, planting the hands to the left side, bowing forehead towards the floor as you exhale. Inhale to come all the way back upright. Take your right foot out to the side, to the long edge of your yoga mat. Press into the heel of your left foot. You could have the hands in front of you for support again, or possibly unsupported, you lean forward and come all the way onto the ball of your right foot. So in Skandasana, again, you could use your hands on the floor, maybe bricks, maybe hands in front of the chest. And gently from here, whichever way you prefer, transition that to your opposite leg at the back of the yoga mat. Again, find that balance first. And when you arrive, let the spine lengthen upwards. Possibly close the eyes just for a couple of rounds of breath to really test your mettle. And when you're ready, blink the eyes back open, transition back to the right leg, turn all 10 toes forward, left hand underneath its own shoulder, left knee to the floor, right fingertips lift into a simple low lunge twist. Maybe bringing right hand behind the head for support, which will allow us to really spin your chest open, a little bit in your deeper. Softly lift elbow. When you're ready, floating right arm all the way back and down to frame your right foot. Spin the left heel down as you inhale, windmill the arms for Warrior 2, Virabhadrasana 2. Adjust the feet if you need to. Really generous bend on the right knee, tracking it over second and third toe. Reaching through the knuckles. Finding that connection to your abdominals by really drawing the rib cage in towards the spine behind you for stability, and then lengthening crown of the head towards the ceiling, shoulders drop away from the ears. Gently, gently, left fingertips go for the back of the body. So you might find again a piece of fabric on your top or leggings. Maybe using your right hand or simply drawing your left fingertips forward to the front hip. Right fingertips reach as far forward as they can. As you pull the hip back, you might be able to straighten the right leg. Then reaching right fingertips in the opposite direction to create space and length along the right side of the waist. Back of the hand could land to the inner thigh, calf, ankle or floor. When you arrive in triangle pose, rolling left shoulder back, spinning the center of the chest open, maybe lifting the eyes towards the ceiling above you if there's no neck issues. Otherwise, keep the chin between your collarbones. And then when you arrive here, really find your feet. Press into the outer edge of the back foot and the front big toe. Connect back into the ground and maybe you'll find a little bit more expansion into the pose. Take the eyes to the floor. Generous bend on your right knee. Slowly, slowly here. Start to shift your body weight into the right foot. Possibly stay on the left big toe or Lift the entire left leg off the ground into full Ardha Chandrasana, half moon. Again, flexing the left toes helps. You can really press the left heel away as you roll the left hip back and spin your left shoulder towards the ceiling. Taking a few moments to breathe here, to settle in. And then gently unraveling the left arm, bringing the hands underneath the shoulders. We draw the left knee towards the chest and then step the feet together at the front. Deep, deep bend in the knees as we inhale, finding chair pose. Utkatasana, one final time, sinking the hips down and back. On an exhale, floating back into the legs, allowing the crown of the head to hang low. Separate your feet as wide as your mat. Have a little sway from side to side, bending one knee at a time. And gradually bring the opposite forearm on top. Give yourself a little nod of the head, yes, and a shake of the head, no. Relax the muscles in the neck if you can. Plant the hands underneath your shoulders. From here, step your left foot, right foot back. Briefly lower the knees and come to a kneeling position. Make sure that you bring all of your props into sort of close proximity. We'll sort of be moving into the yin portion of our practice. And you might wish to also roll up your blanket at this stage so that you're sort of ready. And we'll start with Sphinx pose, so come all the way onto your belly. You can choose to either have your blanket roll to support you on the lowest part of your rib cage, or if you know there's no back problems, you could place your bolster there instead for a little bit of extra height. And you may wish to have a brick underneath your head for support on the highest or medium setting. Once you settle in there and you find a fairly comfortable position, you can relax your forearms in front of you, allow the shoulders to soften and let the palms face towards the ceiling. If you want to add a little bit of an inner thigh stretch here, then you can slowly bend your left knee, maybe all the way to hip height. And the aim of the game is to let that left hip come as close to the floor as possible. So you want to move the knee away from you, possibly even straighten the leg if that's very easily accessible. And the thing about yin practice is that you can always dial it back if you need to. You can always take a step back. And once you sort of find the pose that works for you, let your eyes soften and close. Let the lower jaw separate from your top jaw. Let the muscles in your forehead relax. Let the muscles around your eyes and nose relax. Let your tongue release from the roof of your mouth. Let the exhale soften the shoulders away from your ears. Find your final few rounds of breath here in silence. And when you're ready, swap the leg if you have the leg extended. Bend it, reach it all the way back. Draw your right knee again as high as possible as you would like to, possibly as high as the hip. And if you get all the way there, you may wish to straighten the leg. Again, only if that's very easily, comfortably accessible. And I think for a lot of people, yin yoga is sort of the first introduction they have to mindfulness and even towards meditation practice. Personally, that was very much the case for me. And I think one of the sort of most interesting misinterpretations is that we have in the Western world is specifically the word mindfulness itself. If we sort of look at how that word is used in Pali, which is the language that most Buddhist texts are written in, then it's mostly used as a prefix for other words. So as you can tell, this practice is focused on Sati Sampajañña, so mindfulness of the body. Sati being the direct translation for mindfulness. And what that really tells us is that we are always intending to be mindful of something or explore our mindfulness through something. It's never just this sort of standalone thing or practice. If you have the leg extended, slowly rebend the knee, take the leg back. Blink the eyes open if they're closed and slowly press into your forearms to lift the head. Plant your brick to one side. Hands under the shoulders to lift up into a sort of wide tabletop, and just if you had any props underneath you, then move them away. Take your knees as wide as is comfortable. Let your forehead soften towards the ground, or again you can support that with a brick. Finding child's pose, let your sitting bones draw towards your heels. And find just a few moments here to counteract the back bend, to let your back body soften into this forward fold. Gradually walk the hands in towards yourself. Come all the way into a seated position. We'll start with the left leg forward first. Coming into Janushirshasana, so have your right knee bent out at the side, the foot is towards your inner thigh. If you know that you have a tendency to sort of round your spine in these seated positions, especially if you have to fold forward, then it can be really helpful to support yourself with this rolled up blanket underneath the sitting bones. Can help you find a little bit more lift in the spine. Or you might, if you're sort of hypermobile like I am, you may prefer to use the blanket underneath your knee for support. And you might want to have your bolster fairly close to you. Now from here we'll start with just a gentle side bend. You can let your left toes relax, left hand to the inside of the foot. You can choose to lift your right arm up and overhead, or possibly let the arm dangle behind you. And of course, if you're going a little bit further, you might be able to bring your left forearm to the floor, possibly reach the left hand towards your opposite knee, and from there reach the top arm across and maybe catch the foot. And then leaning into your right shoulder to open and spin the chest towards the ceiling. Finding just a few rounds of breath here, not staying for too long in this variation. When you're ready, walk your right hand in front of you. Bring both arms in front. If you would like to use a bolster in front of you, then feel free to grab that. You can always give the bolster a little bit of extra height by planting a couple of bricks underneath it. And then you could relax your forearms to the floor, possibly allow the head to turn to one side or rest the forehead on the bolster. Of course, if you feel that you don't need that much height and you're fairly close to the floor, then feel free to simply stack the hands underneath your head and fold between the legs. And sort of in this class, I've really tried to give you a taste of some of the philosophies that the Buddha has around mindfulness of the body. And really, he has a very charming sort of little habit of often breaking his teachings into lists. And from those lists, you always get even more lists. And it sort of makes his teachings, I find, very digestible. And so, of course, Sati Sampajañña is not different in any way, shape or form here. He sort of tells us about mindfulness of the body, and then he says there's sort of four main aspects to that. And those are, firstly, the breath, which of course is really integral to our yoga practice. In Buddhism, this would be referred to as anapanasati, mindfulness of the breath. When you're ready, press into your hands, come into an upright position. Left hand supports the left knee as you pull that leg in and swap sides. So this time right leg goes in front. Anything you did on the first side, you repeat on the second side. We'll have the left foot to the inner thigh with the knee opening out. Again, right toes can be soft. And from there, either right hand is to the inside of the knee, or possibly you're softening towards the forearm. You might reach the arm overhead or simply let the left arm dangle. So finding any version of that side bend that you prefer. Some variation that just allows you to spend a couple of breaths here without straining too much, but feeling maybe just a touch of a stretch here along the left side of the body. And when you're ready, again, finding any version of that forward fold that you prefer. So we're folding between the legs, which is slightly different than how we might normally do this pose. So setting yourself up for a few extra rounds, softening into the pose. The second aspect that the Buddha talks about in terms of the body is the four postures. So to him, he was quite curious about just how our mind and physical, emotional body is affected by standing, walking, sitting, and lying down. And so hopefully you do feel that we've sort of explored most of those, apart from maybe walking. But we've done quite a lot of balancing postures, some sitting, some standing, lying down. We've gone between all of them, explored them in different ways, and how sort of our relationship to gravity changes and how that might change our perception of the body as well. When you're ready, plant the hands down, round the spine to come up to a seated position. Again, support your right leg by bringing right hand underneath the knee. Lean back to lift the foot. We'll come into our final pose here, but we'll set it up a little bit more sort of intricately. So we'll have one brick at the back of the mat on the medium setting. We'll have another brick on the lowest setting in front of that. We'll plant our bolster at this sort of angle, and then you can choose to have a block at the bottom of the bolster, which if this sort of curve is too much for your spine, it's uncomfortable, you'll want to have this block. Otherwise, if that's not a problem, don't worry. You will want to have your blanket folded in half at the top of the mat, of the bolster, sorry. And you might want to have your eye pillow close by. And from here, we'll possibly have the feet bent with the knees dropping in. You could straighten the legs or take butterfly legs. Again, if there's a huge amount of gap between the floor and the knees, feel free to support them with pillows or blankets. And then you shimmy up to your bolster and allow yourself to recline all the way back. If you're wearing glasses, put them somewhere safe. Plant your eye pillow on top of your eyes. And then allow your arms to rest down by your side, the front of the body to open towards the ceiling. Allow the inhale to lift and expand you, and the exhale to soften you down. The third thing that the Buddha spoke of is clear comprehension. So our actual understanding of ourselves, and really this idea that we don't cheat ourselves during our practice. So making sure that we're always keeping it 100, as the kids say, but really being honest with ourselves about our body, our limitations and its abilities, which yin yoga is actually quite an interesting place to explore that, because there's always a lot of different options. And if you sort of have the tendency to always go to the most extreme option immediately, I always find that actually the body reacts the worst to that. And a softer approach oftentimes yields better results. And then finally, the Buddha talks about the 32 parts of the body. So in many Buddhist meditation practices, they talk you through 32 different points within the body. And the idea behind that is really that if we're trying to understand the body as a whole thing, it's actually quite overwhelming. And it really helps to think of individual components, which of course in yoga practice we do so often. We're often sort of setting up these postures from our feet, from the ground up, focusing on different aspects that we might be able to connect to, or that we're trying to connect to. And really the idea behind that is, I often give the analogy that when you're trying to focus on the whole pose or the whole body, it's really almost as if you're trying to grab a whole bunch of oranges off the floor all at once. And there's a good chance you just end up with absolutely nothing in your arms. And it helps to actually pick up each orange individually. You might get all the way to 10 that you can sort of cradle in your arms and maybe in your t-shirt, which is a whole lot more than you would have ended up with if you'd sort of just gone haywire, shall we say. And so for the last few moments here, can you let yourself soften? Can you let those ideas just penetrate your mind? Let the breath relax. Let your mind ease away from the thoughts and thinking and straining. Gently, gently, when you're ready, bend your knees, bring the feet flat to the floor, hip as wide as your yoga mat. Let the knees roll from side to side to windscreen wiper the legs and release any remaining tension from the hips. And then gently, keeping the eyes closed, bring your hands onto the eye pillow and move it to one side. Slowly roll over to your left side. Come all the way to seated, keeping the eyes closed if you can. Bringing the palms to touch in front of your chest, bow the forehead towards the fingertips. Take a moment here to plant your sankalpa, so that good intention that guides you out of your yoga practice back into the real world. Hari Om Tat Sat. Namaste. Slowly rub your hands together, gradually making that movement a little bit more vigorous over time until you build a little bit of heat and friction between the hands. And then cup your hands over the eyes, gradually blinking the eyes open within that warm, dark space. Allow the light to come back into your eyes, gradually, slowly lifting your gaze towards a focal point that's directly in front of you on the floor, allowing the eyes to focus. And then gradually lifting your eyes. Really seeing something in the room around you, bringing your attention back into the room. Thank you so much for joining me today on your yoga mat, coming to practice. Of course, if you have any questions, feedback or suggestions, pop those in the comments section for me. If you would like to find me anywhere else online, that information is in the video description below. And of course, if you like this video, please do give it a thumbs up. and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Share it with your friends to spread the good word. And as always, I hope to see you back on your mat very soon, yogi. Thank you so much. Bye.